Girl Campaign 4 Episode 5 recap. That's what this is going to be. So if you don't want spoilers for it, I don't know why you clicked on a recap video, but this is your time to click away because we're about to talk everything that happened in Episode 5 of Campaign 4 right after I say, hey, if you like this type of content, if you like Dungeons & Dragons, Critical Role, just nerd culture in general, subscribe to the channel, give this video a thumbs up, and leave a comment down below to help me in the algorithm and get more of me in yours. Now let's talk about Episode 5. So we start with the soldiers table. They're heading out of Dalmakiar and it's storming. It's at this point that Brennan basically gives each character a chance to kind of say what they're thinking, what they're feeling right now as they leave behind the life that they had, or they go out kind of on the run or chasing after Sid and Casimir. Thimble talks about how she's kind of able to put her grief further down because she's pointed towards revenge, right? She wants vengeance, and that's kind of helping her not be overcome with the grief of losing Thiazi. We also learn at this point that Tayor hasn't seen Casimir or his brother Sid in years, but at one point they were all three like really close. For Sam, he's sitting side saddle, which is just a funny scene in the show. And he says that when he looks back at the city, he feels a lot, but believes that answers lay ahead and the truth of the universe will present itself if he looks forward. When it comes to Tyranny, she looks back and thinks about the fact that in the city, it's all been kind of like a party to her, and she's been exploring all these things and having fun, and now it just doesn't feel quite as good. And that she's come to the realization that maybe she's a bit more domesticated than she originally thought. And then Cadigan is heading back to Timony, and he's getting excited for the hunt. He's sobering up a little bit because, again, drinking problem. And he's watching Tayor lead, something that he makes sure to point out. They then make some rolls to help them with some big decisions, like what path do they take, what road do they think they went on, trying to find a survival check to determine, can they find some wheels, to do some tracks, things like that, which is hard because it's raining and this is a very traversed road. So it ends with them not succeeding to get any sort of information, but we'll come back to that. We then go to an ad break and come back to all 8 players back at the table, which was a surprise because we were told in the episode 3 cooldown that when we came back, we would just be following the soldiers. But of course, episode 4 seemed to have run a little bit longer than they thought. And so we had all of the 8 players hadn't been split yet into the Seekers and Schemers. So basically we got to witness that take place. Brennan did a recount of the previous weeks kind of to catch everybody up and to help people know why characters were formulating the decisions that they were making at this moment. We also learned that Octus doesn't need food or water, doesn't need much rest, but also doesn't really feel rested. He won't age, but he also won't keep the Taconis line going. So is this joke or knowledge that we learned that, well, Octus died a virgin, and now we know that he's not going to be having any kids either. When once again approached about, what is the deal? What's your family doing? Octus is like, I don't know. I haven't really talked to them in years. I don't have any sort of information to give. Valus inquires about the stone. Why did they put it in you? What's the deal with all that? Because of course she's very tied to the stone. That's the whole reason she's here. And once again, he doesn't know. And the stone is still there in Murray's mage hand. Octus then tries to open him up to the stone, like connect with it, but something inside of him is like, no, don't do that. We then see Arcana and religion checks coming out of 3 characters, with Murray getting a high enough roll that she was able to kind of ask a question of Brennan, like what is she trying to get from it? It's basically, hey, is this a phylactery? AKA, the thing that ties to a lich. And she learns a lot. Brennan did a lot of, on a 20, you get this. I think on a 20, you get this, or it might've been a 25, you get this. And I think you get this as well. So I'll run through the things that we found out. First, she started to hear like footsteps of creatures heading to be reincarnated or something like that. There was residual of the magic that had happened there, and learned that something was supposed to happen, but a lot of the interruptions, again, basically what led to Octus coming back, there was all of these things that took place in the previous episode that impacted it not going through, with them doing their spells and Taisha pulling him back in the afterlife because she was on the brink of death and all those sorts of things. They interrupted the plan. And it appears that the Night Song is supposed to be sacrilegiously destroyed by the Taconis, but now it's still around. So now we have question marks of why were they trying to destroy it? What were they going to gain from it? And what's going to happen now that it wasn't destroyed? And of course, there's no like resurrection really in this world, but bringing an undead into the world is not the same. And that is, of course, what happened with Octus. He is an undead. We also learned what I think most of us already knew, and that is that Octus and the stone are now interwoven in some way. Valus then wants to grab the stone. Taisha's like, hold up, we should talk about this. Valus is like, I'm not taking it, but I'd like to hold on to it. Then we cut to Azune approaching Julian. He's trying to earn his trust, says, hey, let's go step away, make sure we weren't followed, to have a one-on-one conversation with Julian. This is probably my favorite moment with him thus far. I think Louise did a great job with Azune right here. Well spoken, very just well delivered, but he's basically saying, trust us, if you'll trust us, I'll tell your story about what happened way back when. Which is another question mark of like, well, what really happened? If he's saying, I'll tell your story, Julian, because I was there that day. And this conversation is where Julian has another just big douchey moment where Azune's talking about these sort of things, and Matt just looks at him and goes,
"Who are you?" You don't like.
And it was amazing because Azune's like, you don't remember me? And that's when he gets into the, I was there that day, blah, blah, blah. I'll tell the story you want me to tell. All of that stuff comes because Matt was like, who are you? Then we get Brennan reminding Murray and Marisha that this isn't the first sort of artifact powerful item that you guys have found, hinting at the coffin and the mask that her and Belair looked into. The Sister of Mist, the thing that was related to the trickster god and all that stuff. Hal then steps into the light and turns things to more of practical sense. Like, okay, where do we go from here? What's the next plan? What do we do about Octus and all of those things? It's acknowledged that when the second group had made it to the Divinos Palazzo that the bodies weren't there anymore. So like, okay, they know that Octus's body is not there. So Taconis probably is still like, wait, where's he at? We know the stone wasn't destroyed. So the jig is up with the whole Octus is dead thing to them, or so they think. Julian asks Octus where he's going because Julian does not want to let him out of his sight. And Velas is like, I should go with you wherever you go because again, the stone connection. Then we finally get Aranessa once again being like, Octus, what did you see? He recounts seeing an orc warrior carrying a banner of the Barrow Guard. Taisha gets a worried look because her and Hal's son Allogar is training with the Barrow Guard and was training under Julian, but he's here now. And they see him at the Dolmar Pass, the Kavrasi Mountains. Velas then goes to grab the stone. Belair is like, I never let her out of my sight, and casts command to try to make her stop. She starts talking back about things. He then commands her to be silent. It doesn't work, and he starts saying, I can make things really bad for you. Then makes her swear not to abandon Octus. And she's like, I'm not going to abandon him, you have my word. Aranessa talks about how she doesn't know if there's anybody left in her family. Of course, her family, the Royces and the Divinos, all that were at the estate, have been destroyed. And then they also knew, if you remember from earlier episodes, that their caravans coming this way were stopped at the Dolmar Pass, where the Taconis families are. She does, however, point out that this whole thing with Octus, the fact that the stone wasn't destroyed and all that, is the first thing that hasn't gone his family's way in years, and therefore wants to stick with him. Then there's a reference to the Sundered Houses and her saying, I don't want to be broken anymore. Aranessa then invites Velas to join them because she says she thinks that they'll die without her. And then Taisha says that she'll go with Octus as well if he wants her to. He's like, oh, I won't make that decision for you. I'm not going to ask you to go. But in the end, Taisha goes. There's a funny line where he's like, I have to remember to breathe. And she's like, me too. Azune then steps up again and is like, hey, we should drive wedges between these houses because if they're working together, not that long ago during the Shapers' War, they were against each other. They mentioned that Halavar and Taconis fought for the gods, whereas the Royce, Cormorant, and Einfasen fought against them. And they're all attacking different angles when it comes to this, right? You know, the Einfasen are getting involved with the guard. We know Cormorant is getting invested in the museum a bit. You know, she showed up, Lady Cormorant, and was talking about the Pariah Blades and showing a lot of interest in getting a tour. And so it's discussed that they should try to drive wedges between them because they can go to them and say, hey, if those guys just wiped out the Roy's house and the Divinos house, who's to say they're not coming for you next, Einfasen? And that's where we get the tables, right? We're going to have the group that's going out, figuring out what's going on at the Barrow Guard and figuring out what's going on with Taconis family. And then we're going to have the schemers who are staying in the town trying to put those wedges where they belong. Azune wants to do those sorts of things now or bring this sort of question to the attention of the houses, but Aranessa's like, we shouldn't do that yet. We don't know if some of them were aware of these things already and then all of a sudden they're actually on the other side and we didn't know that, so we need to learn more first. And before they depart, Julian does ask Azune what his name is. Hal and Taisha have their sweet moment of goodbye, and that's when Octus actually realizes that, well...
Oh man, I died a virgin.
It's the only note I've taken. It's the only note I've taken.
God, that's terrible.
And on that note, I kissed my baby daddy.
Poor guy. We see the Seekers leave the table, and then the Schemers stay around and start planning a little bit. They talk about wanting to do a strategic dismantling and having the houses turn on each other. And then we also learn that Belair let Velas into the town to deal with the Aussie. And then we go to break. We come back to the soldiers once again, and we'll end with the soldiers the rest of the episode, and they cover a lot of ground in this one. When they come back, it turns out that Cadigan could have cast guidance on himself, so he would have had the one more he needed to get a 20 on his survival and therefore get more information. ocean. And so they retroactively put that in, and they end up knowing that it's kind of between two paths. They can go through the forest, which can be dangerous at night, or they can stay on the road where people might spot them. They can go on the King's Highway or the forest. That has a complicated name. They think Sid probably took the forest, and Casimir, having carriages and horses, probably took the highway. Wick wants to go on the road, but they're worried about the image. Thimble points out that they could find Sid before Casimir, maybe if they go in the forest. But before they get there, they recognize somebody hanging in a cage outside of an inn. Thimble recognizes him as somebody else who's, you know, kind of like Theology and her, we're into more of the shady works, the stealing and stuff like that. Sam almost outs them several times about the fact that, you know, he's Wick Halavar and they're on the run and all these sorts of things. It's actually a lot of fun multiple times where they're like, what are you doing? And he's saying too much. We find out that this orc is named Abelang, and then they free him. He then reveals that he saw carriages with Taconis guards and crow feathers. They seemed confused where to go. Abelang also informs them that if they use his name at the Fiddle and Drum, which is an inn further up the road, that they'll give him the hookup, or if they decide to go through the woods to find the observatory tower out there, and then that person will be willing to help them. So this guy's a bit odd, but he's fine. And so they decide ultimately to go in the forest. Afterwards, one of those moments happens where Sam goes, I think that went really well. And they were all like, you did horrible. They make their way into the woods, and as they're going through it, Thimble spots a naiad fairy. This fairy is hiding, and only Thimble has seen them. They're in the water in a fountain. The fairy says, are you in danger? Because I know trees that can kill them. Thimble, of course, says, no. But the fairy informs her that they saw Sid. Thimble also learns that there's Hawthorne's Glade, kind of a safe haven for fairies somewhere else in the woods, but that the big folks are not very welcome. This fairy also informs Thimble that there are dead things in the woods, and they're dangerous. There's a cute moment where the fairy gives her like a bubble around her to be able to speak under the water, and then Thimble gives her a button, and it's really cute. Thimble comes out, not wanting to reveal the things about the fairy inside, and comes up with this whole like, she found some fur, it was very stressed fur, and she gained all this information from it, but they don't believe her. And ultimately, they decide to head for that tower, the observatory, for a rest. They show up in this place as like a scrap metal yard. There's just stuff everywhere, and they notice a banner above the door, some crates of fireworks that are waterlogged. As they cross a certain threshold, an alarm goes off that's caused by a goat who slams their hooves down onto something. And then a little gnome man comes out and is like, oh, you triggered my demon alarm. And there's, again, a funny moment where she's like, oh, so sorry. And he's like, well, it doesn't seem like you're killing me, so it's okay. He's normally observing what's called the storm rack, Barodel. I think we don't really learn a lot about that, but he's asked like, how is it? And he's like, it's getting worse. And some believe this is like a hint towards climate change, like a joke about that within the show. This gnome named Olbred Morn also tells them that he spotted some wagons when he was looking not long ago. So they go up to the observatory, turn it down, and they see some stuff. They spot the Hounds of Timony, the King's Banner, 3 red dots on white, and they are heading south, which is towards Dolmakyar. A little bit later, Cadogan notices that Olbred is lighting some lanterns outside of this tower, and it is pointed out that these lanterns would be visible to those down below, and so they're kind of suspicious. Like, is he giving a sign that there's people there to come get them or something? Then when Teor is on watch, Olbred comes outside and starts mending and straightening up a banner over the door, and then adjusts the lantern because the candle had kind of fallen over. So Teor is like, hey, I don't speak Gnomish, what does that sign say? And then we get the saddest little story about how the gnome's 3 daughters had heard the falcons cry, and they went off to fight in the Falconers' Rebellion. And it's been 15 years, and he still has a welcome home sign up for his 3 daughters, and the fireworks are supposed to be a part of that celebration, but it's been 15 years, so they're waterlogged from rain. The sign is having, you know, deterioration to it, and he's worried that if he ever left to look for them, that what if they came home and he wasn't there? It's very sad. We also learned earlier that, you know, his wife had passed away and things like that, and she would know what to do, and it's heartbreaking. And of course, Brennan basically says in the cooldown, this is, you know, they thought something bad, right? They thought, oh, this is going to be something evil, but it's just to show there's still good in the world and hope in the world, despite the fact that all these bad things have been happening. We finally get Cadogan on his watch, looking at a doll that he had taken from within the house, you know, the kids' dolls, his daughters, and he sees one, and then he chucks it off into the distance, which leaves us with questions of like, does he have daughters he left behind? Is there something else there? But we don't get the answers because that is where we end. That is your recap for episode 5 of Critical Role Campaign 4. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave those down in the comments. And of course, if you want more content just like this, subscribe to the channel, give this video a thumbs up, leave that comment like I just said. And if you want to support me making more content like this, please consider becoming a member here on YouTube or subscribing to my Patreon, link down below. Thank you all so much for for watching, and until next time, good luck in your adventures.